It's this part, the light of Eärendil, the light given to Frodo there in Lothlorien by Galadriel. In the book, Galadriel actually explains to Frodo that the light of Eärendil was captured in the waters of her fountain and placed into the vial, and that the light would grow brighter during the night, and that he would be able to have this light in the dark places when all other lights go out. In the movie, she basically just tells Frodo that she's giving him the light of Eärendil, and that it contains the light of their most beloved star. And similar to the book, she tells him that it would be a light for him in the dark places when all other lights go out. But what is the light of Eärendil, and then what is the origin of the star that that light is radiating from? Well, to answer that question, we have to take a few steps back like we have in other videos. I know I've explained this stuff before, but for me it helps to have that foundation. So Eru Ilúvatar is the god of the Tolkien universe that he created within his writings. And Eru Ilúvatar, before he created the world, which is known as Arda, he created these powerful spiritual beings called the Ainur, and they were separated into two groups, the Valar, which are more powerful, and the Maiar, which are there to serve the Valar. They also being powerful, but not as powerful as the Valar. The Ainur assist Eru Ilúvatar in creating the world Arda by creating this music, and the music projected into this design of what the world would become. And once the world was designed, Eru Ilúvatar spoke and it was created. And on this world of Arda was Middle Earth. But there was another place, a continent if you will, which is named Aman. And within Aman was basically a country called Valinor. And there in Valinor, the Valar and the Maiar lived. Once the world was created, and with the Valar and the Maiar living in Valinor, Eru Ilúvatar created what would be considered the firstborn children of Eru, which are the elves. And the elves were found in Middle-earth by the Valar. And after they were discovered, they were invited to come live with the Valar in Valinor. Not all of the elves responded to this call, but several did. And the ones that did belonged to three different kindreds of elves. Those three kindreds of elves were the Vanyar, the Noldor, and the Teleri. After the elves arrived in Valinor, there was a Valar named Melkor who began to turn evil, and he wanted power and dominion, and he started to sow this discord and deceit, and he started to tell the elves' lives, specifically the ones of Noldor, about how the Valar were basically only keeping the elves there to control them, to keep them weak, and that as a result, the men of Middle-earth would become stronger than the elves, and so there began to be this animosity within specifically the elves of Noldor. Then, after doing all of this, Melkor killed the first High King of the Elves of Noldor, destroyed the two trees that provide light to Valinor that were sacred, and he stole 3 jewels that contained the light from those trees within them, and those jewels were known as the Silmarils. He fled to Middle-earth. The Elves of Noldor wanted to go to Middle-earth to seek revenge, but the Valar forbade them from doing so, and the Noldor already harbored some resentment towards the Valar because of the things and the lies that Melkor had told them about the Valar. So these elves of Noldor rebelled against the Valar, killed their own kind, and fled to Middle-earth to seek revenge and also reclaim those Silmarils that were created by one of the elves of Noldor named Fëanor. And Fëanor's father, Finwë, was the High King that was killed by Melkor. And Melkor is now the Dark Lord Morgoth. So let's fast forward 500 years later and meet Eärendil, who is now living in Middle-earth. Eärendil's father was a mortal man, and his mother was an elf of Noldor. This means that he was a Peredil. And his wife was Elwing. And Elwing's father was half man, half elf, and her mother was Sindarin elf. And Elwing's grandparents were actually Beren and Luthien, who have their own fame within Tolkien lore. One day I'll make a video about them too. But she inherited one of the Silmarils from Beren and Luthien, those stones that contained the light of those sacred trees there on Valinor. However, having that Silmaril would lead to serious problems for her, because thinking back and remembering about Fëanor, the one that created the Silmarils, and he was one of the elves of Noldor that swore vengeance upon Morgoth and rebelled against the Valinor and fled to Middle-earth to seek that vengeance. Well, before Fëanor died, he and his sons made an oath that they would pursue anyone, man, elf, Valar, Maiar, God, doesn't matter, that they would pursue anyone who has one of those Silmarils and reclaim it as their own. And so once the sons of Fëanor found out that Elwing had a Silmaril, they waged war on Elwing and her people. And during this time, Eärendil, her husband, was away at sea. He was actually a mariner, and he was on a voyage. And so when the sons of Fëanor attacked Elwing and her people, Eärendil was away at sea, and many were killed during this time. And after all this bloodshed, and in an attempt to protect herself and the Silmaril, Elwing actually thrust herself into the sea with the Silmaril. And then adding to the overall tragedy with all those people losing their lives and her thrusting herself into the sea along with the Silmaril, her two sons were taken captive. And those two sons, at least one of them, if not both, we're pretty familiar with. And the one we might be more familiar with would be Elrond, the same Elrond that was there to greet the Fellowship in Rivendell, and then his brother Elros. That being said, Elwing did not tragically die after she threw herself into the sea. Actually, a Valar, Ulmo, rescued her and the Silmaril during this time. And after Ulmo had saved her, he transformed her into a bird, and she flew to Eärendil, who was on his ship voyaging. Once she arrived to the ship, she was transformed back into her elven self, and then she and Eärendil sailed to Valinor, with Eärendil's desire to plead for the help of the Valar, and he does this to make a plea to the Valar for assistance and help against the Dark Lord Morgoth, who has created so much destruction at this point in time. However, he being immortal, he's not permitted to enter into Valinor. But with the assistance and power of the Silmaril, once they arrive to Valinor, he's able to enter into that place and make that plea for help and assistance. The Valar heard his plea and decided to assist in the war against Morgoth. And after Eärendil had done this, he was forgiven by the Valar for entering into those sacred lands, which he was not allowed to do. However, he was not permitted to go back to Middle-earth. And what they allowed him to do was to sail the skies. And while he was sailing the skies, he would wear the Silmaril on his brow. And the light of the Silmaril would shine for the world to see. And that light would be known as the Evening Star, or the Star of Eärendil. And so that star is actually him sailing the skies and the light of the Silmaril shining down upon Arda and the world below him. So fast forward to Galadriel being there in Lothlorien, and within the pool of waters that she then was able to capture some of that light that was shining from the Silmaril up in the sky and within the heavens there on the brow of Eärendil. And she captured it within a pool of water into that vial. And so with that light captured in the vial, she gave that to Frodo. And that is actually what he's carrying with him whenever he goes to Shelob's lair. And when you think about it in that context, it makes that light that was given to him by Galadriel so much more meaningful and important. And for me, that's such a poignant moment when he's there alone in the dark, but he's able to call upon a light that will shine in darkness. In fact, it will even get brighter the darker that it gets. And so when I think about that, I think there's some things that you can learn from and find inspiration from, or at least I can. Number one, we all go through really difficult times where we might be scared, we might feel alone, or have to face a challenge that seems so daunting. And at the same time, we feel like there isn't a lot of help or assistance as we're facing that challenge. But I fervently believe there are things that we can call upon to help bring light into our lives in order for us to combat whatever darkness is surrounding us that we're trying to navigate or get through. Sometimes it might be just listening to a song that brings back great memories and fills you with light and love that you once experienced or felt in the past. Sometimes it might be something that you read or the words or counsel of those that you respect that may not be around any longer. And there's also something beautiful about the fact that that light is actually coming from someone who is sailing the skies, someone who is loved and revered and who is no longer able to be present with some of those at least that cared about him. However, his presence is still there. And oftentimes when I'm going through something that has been incredibly difficult, I think about my father who's passed away. I think about my brother who's passed away, or other people that I care about dearly that are no longer here with me. And I can recall things that they've said to me in my life and lessons that they taught me that brings light into darkness, at least for me personally. And so I love that parallel of just him sailing up there within the sky, no longer able to be necessarily there with those that he cares about, at least some of them. But he's still able to be present and provide light and hope to them and even direction. And so, again, there's times in our lives where we might feel defeated, we might feel scared, it might seem impossible, we don't know how we're going to make it through, and we have a really difficult time seeing the light. There's something that we can do to recall light in our lives, whether it be a song, a memory, words of wisdom. Something is usually there for us to call to bring that light, and that light will shine even brighter in the darkest of times. At least that's my belief. And so that's why I love that part, and I love the backstory of what that light really is, where it's coming from, and the meaning behind it.